Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of Master of the Universe Horror Movie Podcast. That's right, motherfuckers. We are back, and ain't nothing you can do about it.
That's
Today,
right, CJ. Go ahead.
Today we can be talking about Frankenstein, the 1931 film. One of the pioneers of not only of horror, but of synchronized vocal horror. Following in the footsteps of its predecessors like The Lights of New York, the very first ever fully synchronized vocal movie, 1928. Here we are 3 years later, and it's a horror movie. And this movie, if you watch it, you can watch along with us, or you can watch it after this podcast, up to you. But I'll tell you, you will see how this movie lays so much groundwork for so many other things down the road. And, someone like me who had never seen it until last week, it really did a lot for me in terms of all these innuendos and little hints and, references and cartoons and commercials and even sitcoms, growing up in the 90s. It makes more sense. You see where it comes from when you watch this movie. So, good film. We're going to go into it. We're going to dive into a little bit. I'll tell you right now. Here's the basic facts, the basic rundown of it. First thing, it's a 1931 film, actually released November 21st, 1931. Directed by James Whale, who's got his hand in so many of these Universal horror films. And interesting things. There's other interesting information about him, too, but we won't talk about that right now. Produced by Carl Laemmle Jr., like I said, November 21st, 1931. So think about it, 42 years before The Exorcist, almost exactly the day. A budget, $262,000, which today would be like $5.4 million. It made $12 million at the box office. Now, $12 million in 1931 dollars today, that's $487 million. I'm sorry, I didn't say that right. It's 243. And I'm an idiot today. Okay. 243,487,000. So that's 1,900% inflation we've had in the past 93 years now. I'm sure most of it happened under Biden. And like I said, same year, by the way, this one's the same year as Bela Lugosi's Dracula, also a Universal OG. And now this film is starring Colin Clive as the son of the Baron. Henry Frankenstein is Colin Clive. Edward Van Sloan as Dr. Waldman. Mae Clarke as Elizabeth, the fiancée of Henry Frankenstein. Frederick Kerr as Henry Frankenstein's father, the Baron, because takes place in German nobility times, Baron Frankenstein. John Boles as Henry's friend, Victor Moritz. And finally, the man of the hour, the man with the power
too sweet to be sour.
Or Boris Karloff as Frankenstein's monster. Really a lot to say about this movie. Just amazing. Simple as it is, it just does so much. And Joey, I'm going to let you go ahead and take off from here.
Yeah, man, we're back. Christopher J, Joey Cage. We're fucking. He don't like to be called Christopher. That's for damn sure. So we call him CJ, the J Man. And if you don't like that, we got 2 words for you. Suck it. But yeah, me and Chris decided to go ahead and get started back on the Universal Monsters movies because they're a little bit shorter. And I was telling you about it, and I was like, oh, the movie's, fucking not too long. And it's less than an hour, right? I think it's like 57, 58, 59 minutes. It was like really short. No, I mean, I know.
I want to say
an hour and 10 minutes. It's an hour and 10 minutes.
Minus the intro and minus the closing credits music, it's about an hour on the dot.
Okay. Yeah, because I remember seeing it. I was like, because I know online it may say something different, but when you put it on, like on Prime Video, it's really short. I was like, wow, I knew it was a short movie, but I didn't know it was that short, dude. But this is like you were talking about. This was released during the same time as Dracula, and they actually wanted Bela Lugosi to play Frankenstein, but he didn't want to because he's too goddamn good looking, dude. I'm like, I hear a kid, and it's so crazy because I think Bela is so well known for that first role that you would think like he's and he is a legend, but just with that first role, I can only imagine how big, much more of a legend he would have been had he done this role, and he would actually do Frankenstein. He would play Frankenstein. And another, I think it's Wolfman versus Frankenstein. He would play it there.
Oh.
Yeah, but he didn't want to do it because he didn't want to cover up his face because he said he was too good looking for that. And he wanted to have a speaking role like the way he did with Dracula. You can understand like Dracula, right? Because not a lot goes on that film, but like when he's talking, we're doing a review of Dracula now. You know, when he's talking, you know, fucking, you're like, oh wow, you know, like it like it mesmerizes you. And here you have the monster, Boris Karloff, and he's like,
exactly, and you put it very well, because two very different villains, because like that's what you say. The very astute point, very good observation. Not a lot goes on in that Dracula movie, and not much more goes on in this Frankenstein movie. But the thing is, what makes the movie is when Bela Lugosi talks in that, just in this role, by the way, which he had done 1,000 times on theater stage, and he just has that he captures you with his eyes, with his voice, with everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. He and I was always interested in how they got that look, and part of it is Boris Karloff. Like I think he was missing some teeth, so he had like a dentures. So he just removed his dentures, and that's how he has that real like caved in look with his mouth, you know. And I was like, oh, I've always wondered that, because yeah, he actually does look like a skeleton, you know, like it looks, you know, I don't know, a deathly or whatever, but
he does, and I'm glad you pointed that out, because I didn't know that that's what it was. But I read a little bit about him. You know, he was married 6 times. I know. And look at the guy, and you wouldn't think that, but fucking A.
Yeah, it's funny because, you know, talking about the whole Bela Lugosi thing, and they would come out to be, and that I had talked to you earlier about it. I was like, well, because we want to do some stuff that's kind of, you know, accessible for everybody. And one of them's called The Raven, and they both come out in that one. And I was like thinking, I'm like, man, had Bela Lugosi not, you know, done what he did, would we have had Boris Karloff as the Grinch on the, you know, the Grinch Who Stole Christmas? You know, because this really skyrocketed him to where I think, you know, Bela was already the top dog, and they wanted him, you know, for all the roles after Dracula, because Boris did so good here. They kind of like, well, we're like, hey, well, we can just get all these other people to do it, you know, because Boris did an amazing job, and he did this one, Bride of Frankenstein, Son of Frankenstein. We're going to be talking about Bride hopefully next week at some point. But just an amazing fucking job that he does here for not really being able to do much, right? But and
that's one of the things I love about these older movies. Not forgetting for cutting you off, but one of the things I love about these older movies is, like, nowadays with any movie you can do anything, because the CGI is just off the charts, and these IT technicians can do anything and make anything look like anything. But back then, you had to be the most believable with what you had, which was limited resources. And here's 5'11" Boris Karloff, looking like this towering, monstrous dude.
Yeah, we pay attention to shit now that people, I don't think, would have done back then. But how big his shoes were and everything like that. And he does look huge in the movie. But, like, you know, of course I've seen like different photos, and you're like, oh, the shoes, you know, the big old Gene Simmons shoes kind of make him look bigger. But yeah, he looks like, yeah, like you said, he looks like a monster. And I know that there's actually a poster that they had released. It was supposed to star Boris Karloff. And it was supposed to be like this super, I don't know how they were going to do it, but it was supposed to be a super huge, like, I don't know, 100-foot, probably larger, you know, Frankenstein, because that was the idea on it. But, you know, Boris did a good job with that. And is there an intro for Dracula?
Oh, thank you, my good man, for reminding me of that. Thank you for pointing that. And this is one of the things I liked about it, because it just speaks to the old timiness charm of it. You know, Edward Van Sloan, who is in this movie with his you know, acting German accent, but here he comes on in his very, I don't know if he's an American or a Brit or what he is, but he comes on in his real voice and gives the audience a word. And I just think to myself, you know, this is the kind of thing, like we take for granted how scary movies are, and we watch it, and it's like a roller coaster ride for us. But we're not fainting or having heart attacks or anything. But I can tell you, my father-in-law was a theater usher when oh God, Exorcist came out, and he had to help so many fainting people out of the theater in 1973, 74. And then now here, this is 40 years earlier. People have not seen any kind of motion picture with synced dialogue like this. So here, to give you the fair warning, is Mr. Edward Van Sloan.
How do you do? Mr. Carl Laemmle feels it would be a little unkind to present this picture without just a word of friendly warning. We are about to unfold the story of Frankenstein, a man of science who sought to create a man after his own image, without reckoning upon God. It is one of the strangest tales ever told. It deals with the two great mysteries of creation, life and death. I think it will thrill you. It may shock you. Might even horrify you. So if any of you feel that you do not care to subject your nerves to such a strain, now is your chance to, well, we warned you.
It's so great, dude.
Horrify you.
It'll through, yeah, and like just that, like it sets the tone, to fucking like you said, like it's that exorcist fucking where before you even saw the film, they were like brainwashing you that this is like the craziest shit you're gonna see, even though it probably wasn't. But people back then, they were like fucking, they're different than we are now. We're so desensitized with everything. Like it's funny because we'll get into that, the thing, we can jump to it now, but there's a scene where Frankenstein throws a little girl in the pond or lake, and she just gets thrown in there, and that's really it. And they, like, for back then, they wouldn't even want to show that because they thought it was too horrifying. And I'm like, man, we got movies, that even in the 90s, I think they've gotten worse now as far as like what they show. But you have movies like Schindler's List and all kinds of fucked up shit that are way worse, than this. But so we get that that intro, and then my favorite part of the whole movie, I think the movie kind of it kind of has an up and down kind of feel. But I don't know about you, but like my favorite part's probably like the first, I don't know if it's 20 minutes, and then after that it's kind of like just kind of goes on a crazy spin. But we start off with Fritz, who's the like the helper for Henry Frankenstein.
Yes.
And they're looking over the gates, and like, I'm not going to get specific with this film because there's not a lot to talk about, but the things I'm going to get specific with, I think.
But it's just them waiting at a funeral, and they're waiting for everyone to leave so they can then dig up. And they're literally like I didn't put this together at first. I thought, well, I mean, why are they also getting this body that was lynched? Why are they also getting it? They've already got the coffin with another body in it, and I didn't understand until watching it not once but twice. He's piecing pieces of multiple humans together to fuse it into one, and then eventually put a brain that's been semi-kept alive in a doctor's university, and then with the power of electricity, the limited electricity they had back then, it just that now I get it. And then with the whole it's alive and the whole what else? I remember in high school there was this one Spanish class, and it had a thing with Frankenstein. It said, "Yo quiero un body con pie, un cuerpo con pies." It's, I want a body with legs. And then there was some other thing like a mix and match of the body parts and stuff. And they would always have the Frankenstein monster, and I never got it because I never saw it. But now, everything, all the innuendos, all the references we grew up with, all make sense.
Yeah, you were telling me that you're like, man, I've never understood it. I never understood all these things that have been in history, like the history that we know, as far as references, I guess, right? And it's a lot of it is from this. That is so crazy, right? That a lot of the shit comes from like these Universal monster movies. Like you said, the stitching and all that. Yeah.
Yeah, and you look at it, and you could just see how like a guy like this who he's a monstrous creation. And like the fact they were going to take the good brain, and Lord knows what would have happened if they would have gotten the good person's brain and not the criminal brain. But that's also a reflection of how society at that time was so. Social Darwinism in 1931 was still a very strong movement and would be for another 10 years later. But that political environment echoes there. But then also when you have like you take a guy like that and he's just a monster. He feels very little pain, or to the extent he does feel pain when you hit him, he can overcome it and keep coming at you. And that's like a Jason Voorhees. That's like a Michael Myers.
Yeah, you could tell. You can see from this where they got the idea from especially for like Jason, like you said, where they're like, well, let's just have this brain dead guy just kind of come at you relentlessly. They've kind of upped it, because obviously this is 31, and by 78 when that shit came out, even then it wasn't the Jason we know, but it was like 81 or whatever when they had Friday the 13th too. Playing that, and it got even more so where they're like, okay, let's just go back to the whole Frankenstein shit. And you can see the influence of Frankenstein, and he's probably my favorite monster out of everyone. And I enjoy all the monster films. I know, like I had said earlier, we're gonna do the Invisible Man, the Creature, Dracula, but this one, I don't know, it just looks badass. And these are some really good movies. We're not doing the Bride tonight, but they actually get more fun and and more shit happens. This one, it's real basic. It's kind of like you had said, like it's funny you had said that, because what I had remembered in my head, like I was like exactly like you. I'm like, why is he getting so many bodies? I thought he just got the one body and got like a brain, but yeah, he gets like a few different bodies that he's stitching them together, and like that whole intro when they're walking, like it's such a weird thing to see in film, to where there's no kind of explanation on what they're doing at all, till after the fact. It's just you're on this little journey that's 10 minutes long, where Fritz and Henry are picking up the bodies, and you're like, what the fuck's doing? There's no context, right? And then all of a sudden we go to Elizabeth, who's this like lady, who I'm pretty sure, dude, she's kind of like got a thing going with Victor, because doesn't it seem kind of strange? Like, I'll do anything for you, Elizabeth,
I agree with you on that, and I have not read the original 1800s novel to know if there's that suggestion. Now, the movie, like you said, the movie certainly suggested. And another thing with Victor, too, that's interesting, I was reading this,
his penis.
In the novel. Oh, good.
Let's go with his penis. No,
I'm sure there's something there, but in the novel,
yeah,
in the book, Frankenstein is not Henry Frankenstein; he's Victor Frankenstein. So when they adapt, this book had to be adapted for English language theater plays in the late 1800s and even into the 1900s. And then it had to be adapted for a screenplay. And then when you have a screenplay, it's not going to stay that screenplay. There's going to be little modifications here and there. So this is a German story, and it's German language. So if you're going to have a Henry Frankenstein, he's not going to be Henry, he's going to be Henrik or Heinrich. Mm-hmm. Now, Victor Frankenstein was the original name of his character in the book. So what in the screenplay and eventually the final movie, the final cut, that just became a friend of Henry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's funny that they kind of go and do their, like, I love the acting of Henry. It's exaggerated, but it's great. But then we go to, Elizabeth talking to Victor. And it just seems so like the cadence is pretty funny, but then they go see Dr. Is it Waldman? I guess
Dr. Waldman.
Yeah, he went to go teach Henry whatever it is. He went to school. He taught Henry. That's all. All we know. And he kind of he says well, he wasn't satisfied with bringing back Did he say they're bringing back like animals back to life that now he wants to bring?
Did.
They did, right? And I was like, well, isn't that fucking fascinating? You know,
that alone is of itself.
yeah. And I was like, what the fuck? So he wants to bring back humans and this and that, and we go there, and that's that iconic scene. And I know you were telling me that night you were listening to it. You're like, no, I know what it feels like to be God, and you hear the thundering, and you're like, yeah, and like. That was, of course, blasphemous, and we were talking about how they didn't want to show the little girl get thrown in the lake. They had cut that part out, like about referencing, like, now I know now I know what it's like to be God, because back then they were like, oh shit, like you can't say that, and now you have motherfuckers that are on the internet that say whatever they want,
Yeah.
But yeah, so that was another thing that was cut out, and that's when they bring the monster, who's Boris Karloff, to life. And if you see him get brought up to that in that watchtower, Boris Karloff is actually in that thing. And I was like, I had read about that, and I was like, man, that's crazy, because that thing's fucking high up, dude. Like I would not want to be brought up in that thing. You know what I mean? Like shit happens nowadays in the 80s and 90s when it comes to stunts, and like I can imagine. Shitting your pants in the 30s, getting strung up like that, and for a fucking.
You have to be just so careful, and you have to think to yourself, maybe on the scenes where they're cutting in on him being there, maybe you're just hoping there's guys with those safety trampoline surrounding it, like when someone jumps or something.
Yeah, something. No, exactly. I had saw it again earlier, and I was like, man, that's fucking crazy, dude.
Yeah.
But,
and can I go back to something you said a minute ago? So are you saying that in the original theater edit from that time, they took out the line where he says, now I know what it feels like to be God?
Yeah, like there's thunder that gets played over with him talking like that. He has right before whatever he says. But yeah, right. It goes, now I know what it feels like to be God. They that whole little section you hear. That's all you hear. And that's like the kind of like the music that I guess that you would have in movies nowadays. But yeah, that was too blasphemous for them to play, or not even to play, but to say on a movie back then. They were like, like you can't say that because
Oh, I know. You couldn't have said that in the 50s.
Yeah. So like these were like when they talk about that intro, like warning you, like it's kind of like that. Like it's things that. I mean, for us nowadays, like I said, there's people that do and say things, and there's shit on the internet now that are so much more crazy and fucked up. But just saying something like that back then was like, whoa, So it's cool, to see an innocent time, where like
Yes.
that was the shocker. You don't have to see somebody get ripped in half for them to be shocked. It's just saying something that's like that, and you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah, no, and it's also neat to know that what we have on like Movies Anywhere, for example, or Voodoo, whatever you watch it on, that's an unedited where you truly see what they were really trying to convey.
Yeah, for sure. So I mean, after that, fucking Henry just decides to get fucking married, man. Well, he decides before, and he like it's I have to say Colin Clive's performance in this film. Him and the monster, they make it really exciting. When he's gonna get married, Fritz gets hung.
Because he's a freaking idiot. Like, and he was told, put the torch down, leave him alone, and he just can't leave well enough alone.
Yeah.
And they're up there in that laboratory, that tower all that time, doing all this research, all this work, etc. And and that Baron Frankenstein, his dad. That dude is a prick.
Yeah, it's funny. You'll see Son of Frankenstein, and there's a bunch of guys that are all like that play that same kind of role, and you'll know exactly what I'm talking about once we get to it. Like, but yeah, you see him, you're like, what the? Because it's such a tonal change, ain't it? Like from the first, I think by the time we get to them, it's like 30 minutes in, because 20 minutes is just Henry and Fritz. Then 10 minutes we get, Elizabeth with Dr. Waldman at Henry's place with the monster, and then all of a sudden it changes to we meet and I'm like, what? Like, and that was always kind of like the spot for me where I kind of like lose interest when we meet.
Yes.
Yeah, Baron, because it's just like, what is this shit? You're like, I want to go back to Henry, like being, just influencing everyone around him, because when his dad's around, it's just kind of like, okay, where everyone's kind of like just focused on him, and it's not as exciting, but that's when you, like you said, when Fritz keeps fucking with the monster, and Dr. Waldman's like, I'll take care of it, and then he gets killed. He gets fucking choked out.
Fucking strangled. And the thing is, like, if Fritz hadn't fucked up like that, they had Monster at a point where he was literally just going to sit down and be cool and be chill.
Mm.
And then they went and fucked that up, and now little girls get killed because of what you did, Fritz, you stupid retard.
There's like no reason, right? Like he's like got like a best buddy. They're both fucking morons, and he's like just an asshole to him, dude. People just hating to hate, He's just fucking with him. And then after that, I mean, I thought it was like I've been thinking this for years. I know other people have talked about it. But Frankenstein throws that little girl, her name's Maria, into the lake, and then he takes off and all that, and then the dad comes back with the little girl who's selling like a motherfucker because she's supposed to be dead, right? And like suppose it, like I don't know how they know, but like they know it's the monster that did it, and like that I've always thought it was hilarious. It kind of fucks up the whole thing, because how does the dad know that the monster threw her in there? She was, she could easily have just drowned by accident. Like no one, like, you know what I mean? If you just found me in my backyard dead, oh, well, Joey died by a fucking Frankenstein monster. Like, no, like
right.
you don't know. You just found her. You just found somebody like that. So I always found it like funny that like he comes there and he's just like,
and like you said, and suddenly the whole town knows about this monster, even though he's mostly been kept, other than his one escape. And he goes to that one small town house of that dad with a daughter. Yeah, he really hasn't been a whole lot of places to be exposed to a whole lot of people, other than who already knows about him. So then he carries her up and he yells to, and this is the character here. This character will get lost on a lot of people. They call him the Burgomaster. In German, it's actually Bürgermeister, and that means that's basically the mayor of this village, of this town. Mm-hmm. And so he's the guy they go to, and he's got that cop on his right-hand side. He's like, but why do you come to me? He's like, well, because, he killed her. We need to go find him. So everyone's got their fucking torches ready to go lynch this fucking monster. And it's amazing how quickly, I mean, because I've been to, I mean, if this is supposed to be in Germany, I've been to Germany, and you don't navigate that type of land that fucking quickly. And there's a lot of places that monster could have fucking hit.
Yeah, I knew what a Burgermeister was just because I watched Santa Claus is Coming to Town, dude. So. Oh, okay. Burgermeister, Meister Burger.
I'm the Burgermeister. I'm a master of eating burgers,
Yeah, fucking. But yeah, and then like you said, they go go after the monster. Henry, finds him, and he ends up getting his ass kicked and taken up to the watchtower again, getting thrown off, but like he hits the windmill. Well, is it the same? It's a different. I don't know. It's not the same watchtower.
See, and that part, as I remember, I thought that was the opening of part 2 after the three of them sitting around talking and laughing, and they show him hitting the windmill blade on the way down, and they thought he might be dead, but then they get him in. But at the end of part 1, like, there's friggin' Baron Frankenstein, not letting his son have granddad's wine,
Yeah. But yeah, I mean the ending kind of like ends the way you would think. It's like that King Kong ending where it's just like at the top of the tower. You can see how everything got their idea from this shit, right? Like it's like that big old ending. But yeah, it was a fun ass film. I don't know if you have anything else to add to Baron von Frankenstein.
I'll add this, and this is just such superfluous, irrelevant information. Relevant, but your average person isn't going to give a damn. But I'm just going to say it anyway. Frankenstein means literally just stone of the Franks, which was the Proto-Germanic tribe that eventually became the French. And that's literally all that means is Stone of the French.
Pretty good.
It's such a bizarre sounding super Germanic name that it sounds like it would be a scary person's name though, but that's all it means.
It's funny you say that because all these films back then from the 20s and 30s, they were like, for whatever reason, they're like German expressionist films is the term, like the type of movie. Yes. And from what I've understood, I'll get into it more in Bride of Frankenstein because I'll do more research, of course. But from my understanding, that this Frankenstein film was supposed to be kind of like I don't know if it influenced or what, but it had kind of like a connecting tissue, if you will, to another film called The Golem, How He Came Into This World, which is a 1920s film. And I think that part of why Bela Lugosi didn't want to take on this role is because if you look up The Golem 1920, you'll see how he looks. And I believe that he was supposed to kind of take on a similar look, and he was like, "Fuck all that shit," because it looks so ridiculous. Yeah. But like I said, I'll do more research. I might be wrong, but from I remember hearing, that's what the original Frankenstein's idea was. I guess influenced by the Golem, which is also German, and the Golem stone and all that bullshit. So it's funny that they're Frankenstein and them are connected, but
that is.
But
my bad, folks. I'm getting over illness, so please forgive me on that.
Yeah, Chris. We were gonna do this last week, but he was dying last week, so we had to move it to Valentine's Day. but for as far as rating and closing thoughts, Chris, go ahead and let the fans know, dude, especially over ass bald motherfucker. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. If we're talking out of 10.
Yeah,
I'm gonna give this one. I'm gonna give this one a 9, just because it's the OG. Mm-hmm. It's a pioneer of its time. You can clear the great acting of theater actors, which is where all the way up to the 70s, great movie actors came from. Was the theater stage. You've got on a very limited budget, making like a 1,500% return on investment. Mm-hmm. You've got like you say, how it lays the groundwork for other concepts and other villains and other horror themes. Definitely you can't disrespect an OG. So you got to give this one love.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. Like, you have to give a movie a rating for what it is and where it is and all that shit. And oh yeah, it's like a 9. It's a 9 out of 10 for me. It's one of my favorite Universal monster movies. Period. I love Dracula. But Frankenstein. There's only the thing is with Dracula, there's only Dracula and that's it. With Frankenstein, there's the original, there's Bride of Frankenstein, and there's Son of Frankenstein, and they're all played by Boris Karloff, so he's definitely my favorite monster. Pound for pound, it's debatable, but because we have three, I think really good movies, I can't wait for Chris to see all of them because they're pretty over like a motherfucker. Yeah, this is one that I go to all the time because the tone is so, I'm gonna go into a little bit more bullshit, but I remember being a kid, 7 years old, at my elementary school, and they had a bunch of old school books. They had the Loch Ness Monster, fucking Bigfoot, crazy shit like that.
Ramona and Jesus.
Yeah, and they had the Universal Monster, of course with Goosebumps and all that. They had the not Universal one. They had it's like a monster book. I forgot the name of the actual book. I think it was I'll think of it one of these days. I'll say it on the next one. But they had Dracula, they had the Invisible Man, they had King Kong, Godzilla, Frankenstein. As a kid, it's not like today where you can just search whatever you want to search, or there's so much more TV now than has ever been. Back then, whatever you saw was just what was in front of you, which wasn't much was just libraries and shit like that. So when I saw these Universal monsters, I was like, wow, this is cool shit. You know what I mean? Already being into horror movies. So
you're absolutely right, because it's just the limited availability of things back then. So even if it wasn't at Video Central or Blockbuster, or if it wasn't in the library's videotapes, you didn't know when you were ever going to see it again.
Yeah, no, that's what made it so special. I think that's why we kind of hold on to old school shit now, you know what I mean? It's because maybe the Puppet Master movies aren't that great, but because in 94, when there wasn't anything going on, you were like, oh, hell yeah, and if you show somebody some of that shit now, they probably won't get it, and that's fine. But, for those people that are, like, from that era, they're like, they can appreciate that, and, like, this is one of those movies to where I didn't even get to watch this back, in the 90s. And, I mean, I know it's from the 30s, but I'm saying, like, everything was so new to me. Just the book, like, seeing this was special to me. That's why, yeah, it's a 9 out of 10. But me and CJ are going to go ahead and talk about Bride of Frankenstein. Hopefully next week. Christopher J's been working his ass off, so we try to get him in when we can. But I hope you guys enjoyed it, and see you next one.
Man, you got to be shitting me. That mother's strong.